Hey Vision Chasers, this is Dr. Bird here with another social studies lesson for you today. Now today I'm going to give you a behind the scenes look. Just recently I celebrated my birthday and I opened up all my gifts and they were wonderful gifts, but there was one more birthday gift that I just got today and I want to share it with you, and so I'm going to open it right now, and so you get to see as well and share in the joy. And I have the gift right here. As you can see, it's in a nice bag. It's got a little weight to it, so I'm really excited about what's in this bag. Got some nice looking tissue paper here, so I am really excited about what's in this brightly colored bag here. So, all right, let's see, tissue paper out of the way, and oh my gosh, you know what? Ladies and gentlemen, I have been wanting this for a while. This is it's a microphone. It's a microphone. And I also do a podcast. I'm a busy guy. The Marvin Bird Show, you can find that at Blog Talk Radio if you want. That's geared more so towards adults and education, but you can take a listen to it if you'd like. And so I've been asking my wife to get me this microphone because it's good. It gives good quality sound and recordings. And so I'm really excited about this. I cannot believe that I finally have this microphone, and this microphone is not cheap either. And so I'm really excited, but I said it has some weight to it, but it doesn't seem to have as much weight as you would think for such a good microphone. So let's open this up and see what's going on in here. No microphone. Maybe you got lost in the bag. No. Weird. You know, I was, I looked at the bag, and the brightly colored bag and the tissue paper and everything looked good on the outside. And so I'm thinking, whoa, I'm going to get something really nice, but on the inside is nothing. Well, I'll have to figure out the answer to that mystery, but I can use that. That actually leads me to today's lesson. And in today's lesson, I'm going to answer the simple question, what was the Gilded Age? And I'm going to do that using a simple device that I've used in many lessons, and we're going to use the 4 I's in order to answer the question, what was the Gilded Age? That being said, let's begin. The Gilded Age was a time period in the United States after the Civil War, and we're generally speaking about the years between 1865 and 1901. Now, the word gilded means bright or shiny or peeling on the outside, but on the inside of that very thing, there's no value. It's rotten. So take, for example, an apple. A bright, shiny apple. It looks really good on the outside, but on the inside, it's just very rotten. And so this was a metaphor that was used by Mark Twain. He actually wrote a book of that same name, and he used this term to describe the United States at the time. Certainly, it looked like many people were doing very well, and they were making a lot of money during this time because of all the inventions and technology and the modernization of the United States. But this was not true. It is important to mention that many people became rich using honest methods, but there were many, unfortunately, who used dishonest methods in order to gain their wealth. And these dishonest ways were allowed by politicians who also became wealthy for allowing businessmen to take advantage of the rules. Now, those who were hurt most were the workers who were not protected. At this time, there was no such thing as a 5-day work week, and a typical workday lasted about 16 hours. Now, just for the sake of time, because I don't want to cram in capitalism in this lesson, but I want to give you just a simple overview of capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system, and it existed in the United States during this time, and it still exists in the United States today. But basically what you need to know is capitalism, it allows private citizens like you and I to own land, to run a business. And the reason that we would own a business or start a business is because that we want to make money. And the money that people make running a business is called profit. So many people during the Gilded Age, they were chasing after profits. And unfortunately, as I said before, there were people who used dishonest methods in order to gain that profit. Now, you'll hear a lot of people even today passing judgment on capitalism, whether it be good or whether it's an evil thing. But I encourage you to do the research for yourself to determine whether or not it's a good or bad thing for society. Don't let anyone make up your mind for you without you doing the proper research. Moving on, let's get into the first I of the Gilded Age. The first I is innovation. There were numerous methods discovered and new inventions during this time that made life easier for many people. Between 1860 and 1890, there were 440,000 patents. And a patent gives the inventor the right to be the only person to sell a particular item. Now, I'm sure many of you are very happy and you celebrate this each and every year that in 1876, Alexander Graham Bell was awarded a patent for his invention. And if you didn't know, well, you're going to know it now that Alexander Graham Bell invented a telephone. For the first time ever in history, the sound of the human voice could travel over long distances. And the world was amazed at this prospect. You see, you have to remember that at first people were used to letters coming by stagecoach and then a telegram using a series of dots and dashes to transmit a letter. But now people could hear and conversate in real time. This was amazing. And as time went on, Alexander Graham Bell perfected his invention, and the distance between two people having a conversation would grow even more. I have here an excerpt from the New York Times in 1915. It reads, on October 9th, 1876, Alexander Graham Bell and Thomas A. Watson talked by telephone to each other over a 2-mile wire stretched between Cambridge and Boston. It was the first wire conversation ever held. Yesterday afternoon, on January 25th, 1915, the same two men talked by telephone to each other over a 3,400-mile wire between New York and San Francisco. Dr. Bell, the veteran inventor of the telephone, was in New York, and Mr. Watson, his former associate, was on the other side of the continent. They heard each other much more distinctly than they did in their first talk 38 years ago. The Transcontinental Railroad offered opportunities to many people out in the West. You see, it was very dangerous to travel out west by stagecoach, and it also took a long time. But this was before the Transcontinental Railroad. So the Transcontinental Railroad is going to cut down the travel time. It's going to be much, much safer. And there were numerous opportunities out west. For steady work, there was working on the railroad. There was also farming because the government was giving away free land through the Homestead Act. And then there were also natural resources to be mined, such as gold. Now, the work of Thomas Edison was very influential and very, very helpful during this time period. His work with the light bulb and electricity allowed for life to change forever. Before Thomas Edison's work with the light bulb and electricity, the day ended when the sun went down. When the sun went down, people went to sleep. A candle or a lamp can only offer so much light, and there weren't many other alternatives. When Thomas Edison figured out the light bulb and made advances in electricity, it allowed for people to have brand new experiences in the evening time. And it also made businesses more efficient because they could also work around the clock if they desired. Electricity allowed factories to stay open longer and therefore produce more goods. Thomas Edison's electric lighting was also placed in homes, stores, hotels, theaters, churches, and even ships and trains. Speaking of productivity, really inventive and innovative businessmen came up with ways to increase productivity during this time. The assembly line was very popular during this time. Now, the assembly line allowed for goods to be mass produced, and mass produced, that simply means a large quantity and less amount of time than before because of the assembly line. Now, simply put, the assembly line breaks down the job so that one person doesn't have to do every aspect. And one of the more popular businessmen who used the assembly line was Henry Ford. Before using the assembly line, there was just one person putting together the car. Now, using the assembly line, the job of putting together the car is broken down into smaller jobs, and it's given to various people on this conveyor belt that moves the car down the line. And what this does is it shortens the production time, and it also decreases the price, which is why more people were able to afford cars. The next I is industrialization. Now, industrialization is simply utilizing machines in order to produce goods. Now, these machines that are used are powered by what? You guessed it, electricity. Thank you, Thomas Edison. Now, these machines are very helpful in producing large quantities of goods. Remember, mass production. And so the number of factories would grow exponentially during this time. Additionally, one of the other things that really helped the industrialization movement was the invention of the Bessemer process. Now, the Bessemer process was a cleaner and more efficient way to produce steel. And steel had many uses. It was used for railroad tracks, bridges, and tall buildings called skyscrapers. There were many of those that went up during this time. Additionally, in the late 1850s, there was a new way discovered to remove oil or petroleum from the ground. Edwin Drake used a steam-powered drill in order to extract oil. Now, this oil from the ground can be used in many different ways. Now, the most popular way is gasoline to power engines, but it could also be used to cook food, run engines and generators, and also light homes. The next I is inequity. Now, inequity means unequal or unfair. And this was definitely true during this time. Now, social Darwinism was used to explain personal outcomes. For example, if you were rich, that meant that you were supposed to be rich. You were born that way, and that's the way it was supposed to be. And if you were poor, that was also the way things were supposed to be, because a person didn't really have what it takes in order to be anything else but poor. And that's a sad but true part of American history. People really felt that way at the time. So with social Darwinism, what that term does is it merges a scientific principle, Darwinism, with society and the way things work and people's outcomes. So Darwinism was used to explain, for example, let's say that there used to be a polar bear in existence that had no fur. Well, living in the Arctic, it's going to be very difficult for that polar bear to survive. And so, after time, eventually that species of polar bear is going to die off because it couldn't survive. It wasn't built to survive. And people use that principle to explain society, in that certain people simply were not built to be successful during this time. And what made things even worse is that the government took a laissez-faire approach to this situation. Now, laissez-faire means hands off. So that means the government did very little to intervene and help those who actually wanted to work themselves up out of poverty, which were many, many people. And they actually made money by not trying to help the situation and make things better for everybody living in the United States. The workers were definitely left unprotected during this time. It was very unsafe to work in a factory at this time. There were no days off. There was no injury insurance. In 1882 alone, an average of 675 workers were killed each week on the job. And because wages were low, all family members had to work. And what made this really inequitable was the fact that children had to go to work instead of school. And what this did was this forced them into a cycle of poverty, inequity. Now, workers would form unions in order to organize and collectively petition their employers for better wages and working conditions. Now, in the beginning, many of these unions were dealt with very aggressively and violently, and they had little success. You see, employers or businessmen didn't like the idea of capitalism being threatened, because remember, the major motivation for being in business is to make money. Now, some things that cut into your profit, I should say, are paying higher wages. Additionally, in terms of inequity, there was inequity with living conditions. Now, there was this technology boom led to urbanization, or the growth of cities. And it was natural that people settled where the jobs were. The jobs were located in the cities. And so that's where people lived, because not everyone had the money to pay for transportation into the city so they could go to work each day. Now, many families stayed in these multifamily apartments called tenements, and these were terrible places to live. They were slums. There was poor air circulation, so no clean air. They were dimly lit. There was no indoor plumbing. They were very crowded and dangerous, as builders decided to use cheap materials because after all, there were poor people staying in these apartments, and these people were looked down upon because of their situation. It's unfair, but it was true. The last I stands for immigration. The United States was seen as the land of opportunity for many around the world. And between the years 1870 and 1900, there were 12 million Europeans who entered the United States through Ellis Island, which is off the coast of New York. Additionally, there were thousands of Asian immigrants who came to the United States as well. Most notably, the Chinese immigrants who came to the United States to help construct the railroad. And as they were working on the railroad, they did most of the dangerous and challenging tasks. And last but not least, many businessmen love the fact that immigrants are coming over because they were cheap labor. Well, that is the lesson for the day. I've answered the question, what was the Gilded Age? I've given you the 4 eyes. And definitely this is not the proudest moment in American history, but things are going to turn around as people are going to look around and notice what Mark Twain noticed, and they're going to advocate for a change. And this time period was the progressive movement. And I've done a lesson about the progressive movement, and I encourage you to take a look at that. Well, that is the lesson for the day. I thank you so much for taking the time to watch this lesson. Please feel free to download the worksheet that goes along with this lesson. Check the Vision Chasers website for more tips and tools as you chase your vision of success. Thank you so much for watching, and until we meet again, please keep chasing the vision. Bye.